Dust drifts across the cracked horizon of northern Syria, where the sun rises over a land that has forgotten peace. The silence before dawn is fragile, broken only by the low hum of an approaching helicopter. Below, the outlines of figures move through the pale light, American, British, and Kurdish fighters, joined in a war most people never saw, a war fought behind the lines. The Syrian conflict began in 2011 as an uprising, one among many in the Arab Spring. But within a year, it transformed into something else entirely, a civil war that became a global chessboard. The Syrian government, rebel groups, jihadist factions, Kurdish militias, and foreign powers all collided here. By 2014, when the black flag of ISIS rose across Raqqa and Mosul, the world's attention turned to this battlefield. Yet what unfolded next wasn't a conventional war with frontlines and divisions. It was shadow warfare, fought in silence, darkness, and secrecy. When ISIS swept through Syria and Iraq, its rapid conquest shocked the world. The Iraqi army collapsed. Entire Syrian provinces fell. The brutality of the caliphate, executions, slavery, the destruction of cities, ignited a global outcry. The US and its allies vowed to destroy it, but the political appetite for another full-scale invasion of the Middle East was gone. The solution? A smaller, quieter force, special operations. They arrived in unmarked uniforms, without flags or fanfare. Green Berets, Navy SEALs, British SAS, French commandos, advisors, trainers, and when necessary, direct action operators. Their mission was not to invade, but to enable. To arm, train, and guide local fighters who could reclaim their own land. In the north, they found their most effective partners, the Kurdish People's Protection Units, or YPG. In dusty training camps outside Kobane, special forces teams taught them how to call in airstrikes, how to clear buildings, how to move as units. The Kurds, who had spent decades fighting for autonomy, suddenly found themselves the tip of the spear in the battle against ISIS. Together, they formed the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, a fragile but fierce alliance of Arabs, Kurds, and Assyrians. The Americans called it by, with, and through. The fighting would be done by local partners, with US support and through their leadership. But the reality was far more complex. Special forces teams lived among the fighters, sharing their rations, sleeping in abandoned buildings, dodging mortars, and watching friends fall. They were advisors in name, but often they were in the thick of battle, calling in airstrikes just meters from enemy lines, guiding convoys through minefields, dragging wounded comrades to safety under fire. In 2016, the city of Manbij became the test. A dense urban stronghold under ISIS control, it was here that the partnership between American operators and the SDF would be pushed to its limit. Night after night, small teams moved through shattered streets, clearing house by house, often within shouting distance of ISIS fighters. Surveillance drones circled overhead. Precision strikes lit up the night sky. Civilians huddled in basements as the front lines shifted block by block. The toll was heavy, hundreds dead, thousands displaced. But by the summer's end, the city was liberated. Behind every mission briefing, there were moral questions. What happens after victory? What happens to the Kurds, the Arabs, the land they fought for? The US presence in Syria was officially limited, around 1,000 troops. But their reach was vast. Intelligence networks, forward operating bases, covert supply lines through Iraq and Jordan. Yet, while their presence was strategic, their situation was fragile. They were guests in a war with no clear owner, standing on shifting ground. Further east, in the Euphrates Valley, special forces teams tracked ISIS leadership through deserts and villages. Every raid was built on fragments of intelligence, intercepted radio chatter, drone footage, a name whispered by a captured militant. Sometimes the targets were high value: commanders, bomb makers, financiers. Sometimes they were ghosts, long gone before the assault began. The operations blurred the line between soldier and spy. Operators wore local clothes to blend in. They rode in battered pickup trucks instead of armored vehicles. They relied on interpreters who risked everything to help them. Many of these interpreters would later plead for asylum, knowing that staying meant death. Then came Raqqa, the de facto capital of ISIS. The battle was brutal, fought street to street through a city turned into a fortress of traps. Coalition aircraft bombed from above, SDF units advanced from below, and special forces coordinated it all from the ground. They were the invisible link between the fighter on the front line and the pilot circling miles overhead. Every strike required precision. Every mistake carried human cost. When Raqqa finally fell in 2017, the city was reduced to rubble. The black flag was gone, but so was most of the city. For the operators, there was no parade, no headlines. They slipped back into the shadows, redeployed, reassigned. Yet the war wasn't over. ISIS cells melted into the countryside, hiding in caves, re-emerging as insurgents. And in the vacuum that followed, new threats appeared. Turkish forces launched operations against the Kurds, labeling them terrorists. Russian troops arrived to back the Assad regime. Iranian militias expanded their influence. Suddenly, special forces found themselves caught in a geopolitical storm that had nothing to do with ISIS and everything to do with power. In late 2019, when the US abruptly announced a withdrawal, chaos followed. Bases were abandoned overnight. Kurdish allies, who had bled for years alongside American teams, were left exposed to Turkish bombardment. Special forces soldiers on the ground were furious. Some refused to leave their partners. Others wept as they watched their friends flee north under fire. The sense of betrayal was heavy, and for many it was the hardest mission they'd ever endured. Not a firefight, but a moral wound. Still, not all left. Quietly, a few hundred remained to secure the oil fields and continue counter-terrorism operations. The mission shifted again, from defeating ISIS to preventing its return. Intelligence gathering replaced major offensives. Drones hunted leaders in the desert. Raids became surgical, fleeting. In 2019, one of those raids reached global headlines. The operation that killed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the self-proclaimed caliph. The mission was carried out in darkness, guided by elite operators who flew deep into Idlib province. When it was over, Baghdadi was dead, and the most feared man in the Middle East was gone. But the victory was symbolic. ISIS had already transformed into something else, a scattered, silent network waiting for time to rebuild. For those who served, the memories of Syria were layered. Moments of triumph and heartbreak, brotherhood and doubt. They remembered the smell of the desert after a strike, the laughter of Kurdish fighters sharing tea after battle, the faces of civilians who had lost everything. They remembered the children waving from rooftops, the night sky lit by tracer fire, the sound of distant artillery rolling through the hills. Some came home and couldn't explain what they'd seen. The war had no clear ending, no single victory to mark. It existed in fragments. 1,000 small stories stitched into a conflict the world barely noticed. For the locals, the special forces were ghosts who appeared and vanished, helping them reclaim towns, then leaving them to the uncertain peace that followed. For the operators, Syria was a reminder that modern warfare isn't about conquest. It's about influence, partnership, and endurance. Even now, years later, small teams remain scattered across Syria's northeast. They move quietly through the dust, advising, training, watching. Their presence is deniable but indispensable. They operate from bases with no names, coordinate with militias who change allegiances overnight, and navigate a battlefield where every ally has another war to fight. Syria today is a mosaic of ruins and resilience. Cities like Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor are rebuilding slowly. Families return to broken homes. The front lines have quieted, but beneath the calm, the conflict simmers. Iranian militias patrol highways. Russian convoys rumble past American checkpoints. Drones shadow the skies. It is a fragile peace, balanced on distrust. And in the middle of it all, The special forces remain the unseen guardians of a mission that no longer fits on a map. They are soldiers without a front line, fighting wars that exist in the shadows, wars of intelligence, deterrence, and quiet influence. They understand that the enemy is not always visible, and victory is rarely absolute. Their success is measured in the absence of disaster, in the day that passes without another flag rising, in the silence that follows a night of tension. Behind the lines, they wait, they train, they watch the horizon. Their war is not one of glory, but of patience, of holding the line between chaos and order, one unseen operation at a time. In Syria, the dust never truly settles. But for those who fought there, in the hidden corners of that war, the mission remains burned into memory. It was not a story of conquest, but of endurance. Not a victory to be celebrated, but a burden quietly carried. And when the world forgets what happened there, they will still remember the sound of the rotas fading into the dawn, the sound of leaving a war that never really ended. Because in the shadows of Syria, the quietest battles are the ones that decide everything.